Yes.
Yay, it worked this week.
How are you, Wason?
I couldn't get things to figure out why it wasn't working. Then I figured out that I had to change my password, and so nothing would work until I got her going, though. There we go.
Take a deep breath. Good to see you.
Yeah, it's just been a week, and it's only Tuesday.
I'll ditto that. Good to see you, my friend.
Was that to me?
No, that you're dittoing to Brian. Good to see you. It's also good to see you too, Pollock.
Yeah,
Hey.
I got your card. All those that curly hair on those kids.
Yeah, there's a lot of curls. That's for sure.
Okay, we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Tracy, please take roll.
Arrington,
Here.
Hoffman,
Here.
Pollock,
Here.
Smith,
Here.
Wason.
Here.
The agenda's before you. There's been no changes. Motion to accept would be in order.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Fiscal 21-22 budget work session. Ryan, go ahead.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you. You should have a packet in front of you this evening, or in your packet, a packet within the packet. And what I'd like to do is just go through it page by page, although most of it will be fairly quickly. But when we get to stopping points, then I would like to try to gather some collective direction from the group, or ask questions, or whatever it might be. But feel free to stop me at any time as well. So we'll just jump right into this. And really the first page I want to call your attention to is our timeline. Just to point out a couple things. As you can see, we've been doing some work behind the scenes already. We're actually starting this week meeting with department heads to further understand their budget requests. January, as usual, will be a busy month for us. I wanted to call out those two meeting dates in January, the 19th and the 26th, if you could get those on your calendar. Now the 19th, we generally meet at 5:30 because we bring all the department heads in, and of course go through quite a bit of data, quite a bit of information at that meeting. And we'll be doing that over Zoom, so that will be a unique opportunity for us this year to get through that. Just also a couple notes, you'll see we have two public hearings in our timeline. This is year 2 of that requirement, new state budget requirements, and then still having a hard time getting used to seeing March 31st as the due date. That's been March 15th for a long time, as long as Tracy and I have been in the profession. And so that's new too. And again, that's part of the new rules. They extended that 15 days so that cities can squeeze in that extra public hearing. So we'll get the bulk of the work done with this group anyway in January, hopefully. And then we'll get everything filed to the state and to the county by March. So moving along to the next page, and the meeting objectives, these should look real familiar, very similar to last year. Tonight, talking from a 30,000 foot level, really looking for direction, guidance from the city council. No decisions will be made tonight, but really we want to, the intent here is to make sure we have at least somewhat of an understanding of what the consensus is, so that we're not going into the preparations totally blind, which generally we're not, because of our meetings and goal setting and CIP that we have presented over the years. But it's just good to kind of touch on all that one more time before we put pen to paper. And then of course we'll ask, get your feedback on social service funding again, and through a couple new ones out there this year, economic development and equity, and we'll talk more about that a little bit. a little bit later. So moving ahead, just identifying recently completed projects. I'm not going to read all these to you, and those watching at home. Certainly you can go to our website and look at the completed projects. And what I tried to look at was since our last, this session last year. And so you'll see there are a number of them. The big one is the police station project, having that done for the most part, a few punch list items, but that's a good one to have off our plate. And I know the chief is really satisfied with what she has there. And then we have ongoing projects. Again, about a half a dozen, just over half a dozen of those. And these are projects where we are in the midst of completing them. Some significant investment here in infrastructure with the $5 million Southwest Growth Utilities project. And then, of course, the Ranshaw House project is nearing completion, and we're all excited about that. And again, mentioning a couple more that on here that you can take a look at that are currently moving forward. And then this year, we're in a bit of a unique situation where we have some projects on hold. And I've identified 4 of them. A couple of them are from related to, well, they're, I suppose, all related to funding, but the West Penn Liberty Drainage Way project, that's not so much funding as it is after we've taken a look at that. We think development to the north of Penn in that area should happen first before we make any significant improvements there. And so that's really permanently on hold at this time. And then the GIS mapping of stormwater, we've talked about that. We've, of course, started with GIS and the other utility departments, but are holding off on stormwater until we can restructure the billing there and look at additional revenue for that utility. The big ones, though, are park projects. And we went into, you might recall, we went into FY21. We identified these projects in the CIP with an asterisk by them, saying, let's circle back here sometime during the year and talk about how we want to move forward with these projects. Well, obviously, it's been a bit of a unique year with COVID and derecho, in addition to all the other regular things that our group is trying to work on. And so we've really just pushed that off. Part of that discussion, I believe, was going to be whether or not we wanted to look at other fees to help pay for this, like the franchise fee. And so I guess the question I would have for this group this evening, or at least to think about, is, do we want to move forward with these projects yet in FY21, or at least start them yet this fiscal year? Or do we want to just take a step back, take one big step back and push the park plans or the park projects back a full year? And I provided a brief summary of the projects in here. And of course, they're more detailed in the CIP, but from Centennial, it's the driveway and the shelters. And Penn Meadows includes parking lot improvements, tennis courts resurfacing, and then the ball field lighting, which was going to be a joint project with NLCBS. And we frankly haven't had any discussion with them on this project, again, simply because they were trying to operate under extraordinary circumstances and really didn't have the time to talk about it as well. So that is, as we move forward, and maybe I'll get through another slide or two and we can come back to that, but that's a question that we will need to answer at some point, is, where we want to, whether or not we want to proceed with these projects that we put on hold. On the next page, I've identified projects that are currently in the FY22 capital improvements plan. And I just want to make a note that, and I think you folks have been around long enough that you know this, but we haven't met with the department heads yet. And so these are what was in the FY22 capital plan last year when we developed it or tweaked it. And so we'll come back to the group and to our department heads and see if there's anything else. Are they wanting to push a project back? Are they wanting to move something forward? Any adjustments that we would propose to make to this? That being said, what I'm asking this group, is there anything on this list that you see and think, no way, we don't need to do that, we're not interested in that? Or is there something not on the list that that brings up a flag that you think, man, we need to get this on there. This is something that we've talked about. So I want to go through one more slide and then circle back on those three and maybe have a little discussion. And the final slide is the goals that we've identified for 20 through 22. And this, you might remember when we met with the consultant in February, right before kind of chaos broke loose with COVID. We put these, the council agreed on these goals. And so now we've made some progress on some, and we really need some direction on the others. And so I put little notes by each of these, and kind of starting from the back end, because it's really the low fruit. Consider the IT position. Well, we're there, we're doing that. We have that out, and actually the application period closes tomorrow on that. We talk about considering a franchise fee for park improvements. And these were in order of priority, or how they were ranked, but I'll just mention that that's tied to the number 2 one, develop a plan to complete Centennial Park, which also happens to be tied to the projects on hold. And so a lot of these are related, and it gets a little messy, and we really we need to have a messy conversation at some point. The assemble a youth council is on there, and I mentioned to this group we'd like to do some research on that and bring it back to the city council for discussion in the early part of 21. Update the comprehensive plan, and Russ and I have had a couple conversations on this, and this is a project where I think we could get going on right away, even before we start FY22, and that's as a result of some FY20 fund balance funding that we have, and that's noted later in the packet. Move forward with the Civic campus plan. Again, I think if we can make a decision on what we want to do in terms of constructing new or at the Civic campus, or purchasing and renovating the current facility or something else, we have some funds available, I think, to start a design or making movement in that goal again right away. And then the last one, and I think this is a little bit of a tricky one, certainly budget related, and that's determine the city's role in economic development. And I would propose that we have that decision probably after we get this budget put to bed, so that we can spend some time on that and better understand everybody's concern there. So that was kind of a mouthful. I guess what I would, having said all that, I'd like to hear from the group. Generally speaking, is there anything that jumps out at you? Any concerns we need to address moving forward? I guess anything relevant to what I just presented.
Ryan, I'll pop the seal here on this one. I think the only thing that jumps off of the pages for me is the projects identified in the draft FY22 CIP. And I know that you and I talked about this at our monthly meeting either last week or a couple of times ago. The Centennial Park, I think we were all curious to see if we could fundraise for that and for this not to be on the city's budget in some way. I think there would be a lot of excitement within the population to raise money for that. We had a moderately successful fundraiser for the library expansion when that happened, and whether this would be a similar effort or something of that nature, I think there's I felt like there would be a good enthusiasm to go that route for the pavilion.
Just a couple points on that. I think you're right. I think we would have a fundraising opportunity. I don't think we could fundraise for the entire $3.5 million. I don't think that's a realistic goal going into it, and I think that's what a fundraising consultant would tell you. So just something to keep in mind. The other point is we have at least according to the numbers in FY21, $700,000, at least $650,000 of improvements to get in there before we would do the amphitheater with the road. And I know the road, the park road, it's not a sexy project, but it's one of those, it's got to be put in.
Yeah, and I've come around to understanding how important that is as well. So I kind of glossed over that because I just kind of consider that a must do and keep in there before the pavilion gets raised for.
I guess adding to this page, the FY22 CIP. So Chris, I appreciate your note there, because I've always kind of thought, hey, and maybe it's different after, just the economic impact with COVID. I don't know, but I think it's worth a shot from a fundraising perspective to see if there are things that do make sense there with Centennial Park. Definitely, appreciate and obviously it's been a priority of ours, to continue to develop that. But is there a piece there? I guess the thing, Ryan, you said that if there was something that jumped out to us that maybe we didn't think should still be on there. Nothing from my perspective, almost though opposite the police simulation. I'd almost like to, if it makes sense, and obviously team here, we can have discussion, but if there's an opportunity to, I would say in all these on this page, that's the highest priority. So if there's an opportunity to somehow do that earlier or do that first, I think just given everything we've gone through this year, I would rank that highest. And 60,000, obviously it's all important, but just kind of one of the lowest dollar amounts on this page. So that's my feedback on that page in particular.
Thank you for that. And I would just, I'm sorry. Could I just note on that police simulator? I haven't talked to Diane recently about that. And obviously with some of the things changing in their world, they may have other opportunities now with this. So it may still be one of her top priorities. She's been involved in so very much in terms of policing and equity here in the recent few months. So we'll hear more from her though in January. So thanks for that.
Thanks.
And I would just comment on the simulation. If this is just a program or a web-based thing, I'd be less likely to approve that. I'd rather this be a national licensed person-to-person type of training rather than a computer-based something that checks the boxes and they're able to just sit and pass with a quiz. I'm not interested in that. I would be more interested in an actual national based accredited type of scenario based judgment training. I don't know anything about it. I just bring that up. So I'll be interested to hear from the chief on what that is and what her plan for that would be.
So I suspect it's probably like the University Public Safety has a simulator that we used for the Citizen Police Academy, and it's video based, and then there's an instructor and you can adjust the scenarios and assess your response, and you can tell you what you did and didn't do. So.
Rakisha, I think you were going to say something there.
Yeah, I was going to say, just in agreement with what has already been said in terms of what's on this list, there's nothing really jumping out to me that's not added on there. I'm also curious to know about the police simulation as well. And if it is similar to what Brian just said, then that would be, more acceptable. But I'm with Brent. If it's just, a click of watching the video and having a small discussion without any real practice or anything like that, then no, I wouldn't be in favor of that. So yeah, I think what's on there are things that we have talked about and would probably need to continue those conversations to see in terms of what is the priority and what are the big ticket items, and what has changed throughout this pandemic as well.
Mayor, one other,
Yes.
Ryan, or can you educate me on a reminder of the storm warning siren? Why we need that and what's the risk if we don't have that? Or maybe that's a later, but
No, it's a good question. That's an upgrade of a current siren so that we can reach a subdivision. And I think it's, Tracy, do you remember, is it Cedar Springs or maybe
It's
one out by the
It's Fox Run.
Fox Run? Okay.
I just wrote the grant application for it last week, so it's fresh.
So we have it in there. It's been in there. Well, then with the FEMA funding that's become available because of some of these storms that have recently come up, they now have a grant opportunity for us. So that we're hopeful that we can get some or all of it funded through that, or most of it. But you know that we never rely on that until we hear yes. So, but it is if we look at it and we can get you a copy of our storm siren map, you'll see that there's an outdoor area in Fox Run that's that we need to improve on.
okay, thanks. Thanks, Tracy, for the grant work on that too.
Brian, I know this is a little bit of a rabbit hole and I don't want to spend much time on this. I've been contacted a number of times from two specific individuals about storm sirens and concerns about the coverage out at the high school and the dog park. You've sent me that map. We've looked and talked about that map and what that coverage means for decibels and what the requirements are. I don't know if you and Tracy have any additional information on, you know, have we dug more into that? Is that something that needs to be added with this Fox Run project if there's grant monies available?
Well, I think we probably, well, I should let Tracy speak to that, but I'm guessing we missed the boat if we still want grant funding. But it was my understanding in my recent conversation with Michael, Tracy was involved in that as well, is that we're set up pretty well, but we can certainly revisit that. I thought Brent, when we talked last, we were hitting it out there at the dog park even.
Sorry, Tracy, I'll let you.
No, it's fine. Our coverage map doesn't show that there's a deficiency out there. It shows that it's very adequately covered. We're only eligible for one siren, and the area that we're applying for is deficient. I mean, there are areas that there is no coverage per our coverage map. Think North, Aspen Ridge, and that area that's developed in the last 10 years. So we're just upsizing our siren to go further.
Other comments you want to make?
So just kind of looking at the list, you know, I think that the Civic campus, we need to kind of decide what we're going to do about that. I don't know if I'm not clear that we've 100% committed to putting something up by the PD, what we envisioned. But I think that's one of the things we need to figure out, because it does have some impact on Centennial Park and the Pavilion, because I think we're going to have to do one of them, and we're probably going to have to bond for that. And renting City Hall where we're at is going to cost us money. Not having a park pavilion is not going to cost us any money right now. Although as much as I want to get that built, we just need to, I think we need to get that nailed down and decide where to do it, because I don't want to spend a lot of money on designs for two different places. I'd rather, let's say, hey, we're going to go one and then let's go for it. And I'd like to get going on that, because as we know, it took a lot longer to do the PD than we had hoped. And so I'd really like to get going on that. You know, some of the stuff in the park, Centennial, you know, the lights, I'm just not seeing that right now. The way things are going, I don't know they're going to be playing baseball again much next year until late in the summer, so which I'm afraid of. So I think that's probably one of those things that, you know, we need to probably push back for one more year. But I know the tennis courts are getting to be a problem, and I'd like to kind of maybe see if we can get that chunk out of there in this upcoming year and stuff. So I think updating the comprehensive plan is a good idea. We need to get that kind of squared away because we're now getting to the point where we have room to grow in different areas, but the stuff in the middle we need to kind of make sure we're being consistent with now, and that's where the next area is going to open up at. And some of these street projects, I think, we just got to get them done. So I know that I tend to not be one that likes to raise taxes or anything, but I'm not sure that we're going to be able to do as much stuff that needs to get done in the next little bit to keep everything safe and properly aligned without doing that a little bit. So I think that's the other conversation we need to have. If we have to do that, how comfortable are we at that?
I agree with that.
Brian, did you have some street projects that you think were more important than others?
I think that, getting to Dubuque Street, and all that intersection up there by Sugar Bottom, that all needs to get straightened out because that's just dangerous, and it's really kind of, it'll if the Civic campus goes in that direction, that's something that's going to need to get done. So I think that is the first thing we need to really get going on if we're going to do one thing at a time. But some of the other older part of town, we've kind of set aside money, out of the road use tax, and we can kind of keep plugging away with that as best we can. So the timing may switch a little bit, but I think the idea of using that road use tax for that older part of town is a good idea. So,
Mayor, if I could piggyback on Brian's. So Brian, I think you're right. The funding for parks, I think we need to have the conversation, the franchise fee first, because if we're going to agree or disagree on that, let's get that figured out. And if we agree and parks is what those fees are going to go towards, then we can move forward with that. On the baseball lighting, I guess the only comment, obviously being a heavy user of that park, myself with teams, baseball did continue through COVID this year, was successful, and it does have a financial impact to our businesses. It draws additional folks to the community, and hopefully by summertime, we'll have a fair amount of folks vaccinated, and we'll have some more tourism that'll be coming in and impacting restaurants and the ice cream shop and those types of things by drawing in additional tournament space. But that would be, I guess, my addition to what you were talking about. So thank you, Mayor.
I think I'll piggyback on that too, Mayor, if that's okay.
Sure.
So I very much would like us to have that franchise fee conversation. I'd like some additional education on it, obviously probably all of us, and then we can have that conversation to determine yes or no, and then have the next conversation with that. So I think that would be really important for us to have in an upcoming meeting here. Brian, I think you bring up a good point, probably the elephant in the room, just how do we prioritize and that Civic campus, just what do we do and how can we sort of move to an overall consensus on that is important. I do think I echo that street, that intersection there is important. You were saying there by the Dubuque Street, by that whole area makes sense. I think after the franchise fee, then we can talk more about parks. Ryan, I think you brought up a good point too. Is it something as a definite park supporter and lover? Does it make sense so that we move that a little bit further down the timeline, maybe part of it? I would like to know from the Penn Meadows project, and it's probably just not in the detail I have here, but with the tennis court resurfacing, just what's that cost outside of the overall Penn Meadows projects? I'm not overall in favor of the parking lot. I think I've been kind of on that for a while. I'd rather keep that green space for everyone to use there at Penn Meadows, respecting, of course, the baseball and all the positives that come with that, but I just prefer to keep that as a green space in North Liberty. So I'll pause there, but I guess overall, I think the franchise fee is really important for us to have as an upcoming dialogue as a council.
Quick response to your questions. The tennis court's 125,000 is what it's budgeted as. And the parking lot costs are mainly rehab of what's there, and it's in pretty bad shape. So we're gonna have to address that before too long. There is some new, I think, proposed, but a good chunk of that is rehab.
Thanks for the update.
Other comments, folks?
Well, I think this has been helpful. I think what it sounds like, obviously, we need to have a couple conversations. One about the Civic campus. I'd like to have a conversation about the comp plan because I think we can move that forward relatively quickly. And then, of course, about the franchise fee. So maybe I'll work with the mayor to so we can get those scheduled in some upcoming meetings. In the meantime, we'll move forward, obviously, with budget preparation, and we'll just have to realize some of those conversations will overlap, and we may not have answers on some things when we're trying to talk about a related issue, and so it just gets a little bit messy. But that's okay. That's what we're here for, to get our hands in the dirt and make hay.
Actually, Mayor, can I ask one more thing?
Well, sure.
On this topic? And Brent, I'm actually gonna tip this to you. So I'm curious what your thought is, just since you've been quite involved in the economic development piece and obviously really involved with everything COVID related as a broader community. What's your thought on that now? Or when Ryan kind of leading us into this discussion, you said, you know, do we look into this further after this budget cycle's done? And maybe that's, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Brent, but do you have thoughts now or maybe a future meeting? I'm just curious your input since I think you're really close to it from our team.
Yeah, I still remain steadfast in the belief that the city is grown to a position that they should have their own economic development staff person. I think that our partnerships with ICAD and Think Iowa City certainly continue, but I think that we have unique opportunities to control our own destiny and have somebody that's boots on the ground most of their day selling North Liberty. I think we have unique opportunities for land growth out in the Forever Green Corridor. I think that's slowed now because of what's happened with derecho and COVID for sure. But North Liberty is not going to stop growing. And as we come out of this here, out of the pandemic, I think we'll be poised and sitting pretty well to be able to continue our growth. And so I certainly want to continue to have those conversations. And I know Ryan him and I have had a number of conversations, and he remains dedicated to additional conversations with staff, myself, other counselors that are interested with ICAD and the partnerships and specifically what we're looking for to grow our city.
Thanks, Brent.
Anything else you need, Brian?
I just got a couple of slides I want to pop through yet, but I think on that first portion, we're good. Thank you. Just on social services, I think we have a flavor for what the group, how the group wants to move forward based on last year's discussion, but want to come back to that. We've incrementally increased that budget line item. I anticipate that, we'll continue to see more requests. I'm sure Tracy can confirm that as well. Are we going in the right direction there? Do you want us to allocate some more funding in that line item, more than what we previously have in previous years?
Your thoughts?
So I have one thought that, well, it's always been my belief that, the money that we use for that should be directly should, go to agencies that really directly help the city's departments do their job. And I think we've done a pretty good job with that. And I think the other thing we maybe want to do is if we had a couple things pop up that were worthy this year, and I think maybe there was a slide about that somewhere, but maybe if we bring that up a little bit, that we don't allocate all of it right off the bat and save a little bit for things in the later in the year. So I would maybe come up, maybe 100, we're at 125, and maybe give ourselves like $10,000, but don't allocate all of that out. And so we actually have some flexibility, because we help pay for the truck. I think we ended up more stuff with the food pantry. So things will pop up, and I think being a little flexible, and then we won't have to scramble to come up with funds for things.
I think, Brian, you pose a great point there of us allocating a little bit more and having a little bit of flexibility with that, and giving priority to organizations or groups that will definitely benefit North Liberty. I know sometimes it's far stretched, but I think it's very important that we make sure that the people here are benefiting from those services as well. And we're being very strategic about it. But I am in favor of increasing that and having some wiggle room, just because things do come up. And this year was a prime example of that as well.
Mayor, I'm struck by a couple of things that Brian mentioned last year that come to memory. One, a lot of the funding that we had were school-based. And so, he mentioned that we maybe need to take a look at that and focus in on the school-based programming. Certainly don't want to discredit any of those, but see if there's maybe some room for improvement there to just focus that money a little bit more on the school-based. The other thing is Ranshaw House, and Annie and Rakisha's discussions about offering that space to social service agencies certainly is going to be a very large contribution of the city's to social service work within our community. So I think we need to consider that also, and then also remember there was and Tracy, you can probably help me, there was a program that reduced their ask by over $30,000, if I remember.
Family Resource Centers in the
Yeah.
school.
Yeah, Family Resource Center.
They restructured how they handled staffing to make the costs more equitable across the district.
Okay.
That's what helped us equalize the social service grants last year and got us out of those fix.
It did. Do we, Mayor or Tracy, do we anticipate a larger ask from them this year? Was that a 1-year reduction, or is this an overall long-term reduction ask?
I really don't have any idea. I anticipate that it would likely continue down the same path because their structure has not changed in the last 12 months.
Okay.
One thing we want to talk about is school-based programs. We cannot discount the fact that Clear Creek and Manor has just as much need at times as Iowa City's public.
Yeah, and I would just add that after our discussion last year, I reached out to the superintendent there, and he put one of his team members in touch with Tracy. So I suspect we'll see a request from them this year.
That's good. That's fine.
Yeah, I had a couple of points about that as well. I think if memory serves me correctly, the Iowa City schools made a smaller budget ask because they knew what kind of a school year we may be looking at and that we're currently in. So that restructuring may have been a reaction to what they are in currently. And I don't expect that, well, I have no idea what it would be this coming year, if it would be the same or if they might need some more dollars in there. Either way, I think those monies spent in those resource centers do get back to serving North Liberty specifically. So going through a school district is taking it off of the plate of other service organizations that assist similar populations. And it's great that we are getting the word out to Clear Creek Amana to North Bend Elementary if they do have a need for programming like this. For whatever reason, they just have not submitted any applications for that. My thought on how much we increase on this doesn't necessarily have a dollar amount attached to it, is that I just know that besides the school district, there was an organization last year, and Tracy will laugh at me because I keep referring to it as the Mayor's Youth Empowerment Program, which it is not. There is another organization, Tracy, that we've now started using at the library, that if we gave them a lot more money, they could do a lot more work within our library walls. I feel like that was close to a $30,000 ask, or maybe larger, that we could have funded, and that would have directly gone to North Liberty kids here. So, and I think with social equity that we are trying to combat here and to equalize in the community, I'm not opposed to a dollar amount that can help us achieve and meet some of these goals that we've identified in the last 6 months, but I don't know what that dollar amount is. So I will ask for your help, Ryan, Tracy, staff, on what some of those dollar amounts may mean in our social service funding out there. And then to tie back into what Brian said in the beginning of all this, is that let's allocate money, but let's not allocate it all. When the applications come in, let's hold some of that back.
Chris, I think the organization you were referring to is United Action for Youth.
Yes.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo.
And that is one of the organizations I think has been in conversation about providing services out of the Renshaw House as well when it's done. And it goes back to what Brent said as well, to take that into consideration in terms of our, ability to support those groups or organizations to provide services in our community.
Yeah, and to address that, Tracy, could you tell me when a group, when a social service group is meeting with clients and they're needing city space, is that something we have some history with, and do we charge for that space to be rented to those organizations?
We don't charge for any nonprofit to use spaces in the community. Currently, we have some social service organizations that use meeting rooms in the library, and the conversations have started with all of the organizations that the city currently provides social service funding to. And I've gotten feedback from all of them about their interest and desire to use the Renshaw House. And so it's been really good. Getting all of our ducks in a row for that, for when things open. But right now we do provide space. It's never enough, just because during prime time at our rec center, the rec center and library meeting spaces are all full, being well utilized. So the Renshaw House just provides another opportunity to have.
Look at the Renshaw House, and then if we may have to cut down on some of the contributions that we make to folks, those things, if we do it rent-free, should be considered in kind for their grant application process, and it does have net worth.
It would, and that's and while that's true, I also think that a lot of the application language that we see isn't to cover rental space for us here in North Liberty. I think the application dollar amounts that they're looking for are for staff, and they're looking for mileage or for vehicles or ways to support those staff members in some way. So I don't see in those applications ever, and I thought that was the case. There's no rental fee for the rec center, nor would there ever be for them at the Renshaw House. It's simply providing more employees to be hired or supported in that way. But to your point, Mayor, being able to say that these are in kind, I don't know, maybe those are things that they should have been putting on applications for years now. If they're using the rec center, that they could claim that as well. So it's a couple of different ways to go. But having actual dollars, whether it comes from us directly or can come through a matching program because we're providing space, However, at the end of the day, it supports those organizations is I think what we're all trying to help with.
Did we budget for fitting out Ranshaw House to use for anything?
There were no funds budgeted for putting in office furniture. The North Liberty Community Foundation is working on that component. That was one of their fundraising pieces. Fundraising is kind of all over the board this year. It's another hit or miss category. So we're going to do our best. We as city staff will figure out a way to make it work. We do that with everything. We will find a way to find desks and chairs to have it outfitted so that it is usable space.
And is there anything you need from us right now?
Not at this moment.
Okay.
I'm excited about the house. That's all I'll say.
Well, you
I
want
did.
to make it new City Hall?
What's that?
You want to make it new City Hall?
Not that excited. I don't think it would be big enough for us.
Oh, man. Okay.
But I'm excited for you guys to see it when it's done. It'll be something really fun to share.
Other comments? Ryan, did you have something more?
And not on social services. That I think we've got our direction. We can work from there, and then we'll continue that discussion then in January.
Annie, you had something you wanted to add?
Thanks, Mayor. So I know on this sheet, it's nice to see the dollar increment. I know when we get into more detail, I always like to see too, just the percentage of all the different slices of the pie. So just how is this increasing, or are we staying at least consistent from an overall percentage with our budget? That's just something team I look at, and I'm sure stating the obvious, just due to all the impact in 2020, I would anticipate we'll have more requests. So I just think these decisions will be tougher for us. I don't know if you have any inclination of that, Tracy, but just something to be thinking about.
Okay. Ryan, do you have any more?
Yeah, just a couple quick hitters here. I put the next slide in there on economic development, really just to make you aware of two things. One, that ICAD's request will stay the same, and two, we will be seeing a request, an increased request from the EDC, the Entrepreneurial Development Center, who's been very active in North Liberty this year. So we'll plan to budget for those things, and then as usual, those folks will come make a presentation probably in March, I believe it is, to the city council, where we can make final decisions on those numbers. And then the others are just, I just put some placeholders in there. We'll fine tune those as we move through the budget process.
Ryan, I've got a question on Blues and Barbecue. Were we able to roll funds that were unused from this year?
Tracy, do you recall how that worked out?
They
We'll have to go back and look at that, I think.
and our monies, I don't know, our monies did go into the project. They would be held in the foundation specifically for Blues and Barbecue. But I don't know how the Blues and Barbecue Committee is planning for use, because I do know they did some other things this summer with Blues and Barbecue donations. But I don't know what next year will look like.
And then really the last thing on here that I wanted to point out or talk about was equity. And I want to make just a couple notes. What you're seeing there is kind of on the slide is just a snapshot of some of the things we're doing already. The full list, of course, is attached to the packet itself. Nick Burgess and I are in the process of lining up a meeting with the group that had sent the previous funding request for equity issues. And so we're going to meet with that group to better understand some of their funding requests. And I know we've had this conversation a little bit at council. You're seeing what we're doing. We're also, the upcoming budget will include some additional training money for staff training when it comes to equity and diversity. I will say a lot of the training, or a good chunk of it right now, is being offered for free, and that's been great. And that's why we've been able to take advantage of so many things, so many of those sessions that you see that are listed in that appendix. So with all that said, I guess I'm looking for confirmation that we're continuing to go down the path here. Is there something, again, I'll use the phrase that I used earlier, is there something, is there a red flag that said, no, we don't want to do this? Yes, we want to do this. I guess if there's any additional direction than what's already been provided, love to hear that as well.
I think I'll jump in here and just continue to support. I think Ryan, you and the team and everyone's just doing an outstanding job. So from my lens, fully support continuing to do the great job and expand this.
I think you all are doing an excellent job as well. I think just jumping in and grabbing the bull by its horns, as we say, you all have done a lot and taken advantage of those free trainings. While they're all free and the many resources is also beneficial. One thing about this pandemic has allowed things to slow down a little bit. So it allows people to actually reflect on what they're learning and possibly have more valuable conversations surrounding what those training topics are, instead of trying to do this within the hustle and bustle of providing programs or services. With it being a little slower, they have a little bit of time to actually see how they can utilize that material or change certain approaches or practices that's already being done.
Tracy, do we have a current program, a survey or an outreach in any part of the city where we solicit input from citizens on, whether it's services or anything generic at this point?
The Neighborhood Ambassadors Program will probably be the inroad to making that happen.
Okay.
Right now, it's just kind of need driven. There's no ask loop.
We
Yeah,
did
so
have-
the reason I asked that, Ryan and Tracy, I guess, is just, in FY22, I'd like to see some, documented feedback from citizens on all of the hard work the staff is putting in with equity and diversity training, hiring, all of those things, to see if they're seeing it in the services rendered and on the street. Just a point there.
Well, I appreciate that. And I do think the Neighborhood Ambassadors is going to be a great opportunity. I wanted to just point out, we were doing, the communications had a survey to, was it called POP, Tracy? Is that POP acronym? We rolled it out a while ago, and it was all online, of course. And so that limits our responses. And so, again, I think the Neighborhood Ambassadors Program is really going to help us with that feedback. Well, I will report back then to you after our conversations with the group that had, I don't know that they have an official name. Kelly Civic is leading that group. And so we're meeting with them. I'll report back after that.
Just as a reminder, the ambassadors' little mini get-together is Friday at 4 p.m. So if you can make it, appreciate it. If you can't, certainly understand. Everybody has their own schedules, I know.
Mayor, if I can ask one more question. So the Humanize My Hoodie workshop that's being offered, and the city is sponsoring a couple of spots for registrants. Do we know if people have taken advantage of that or not?
I don't know that. We can find out. We're partnering with the chamber on that. all three cities are. So I'll ask Nick what we've heard so far. Mayor, I just have the last page there, and that is, you finish with the positive news, finish with the bang, and that's the general fund reserve page. And I don't think we really, I'm not looking for any direction on this now. It's really just for your reference as we get into as we want to make some more of these decisions. We do have some funding available for projects with this remaining balance from FY20. It looked really good in FY20. I don't think we can count on a significant balance ending in FY21 like we have the last couple of years, but really just a point of emphasis here that we will have some funding to move some projects forward if the council desires. And that's what I have from a budget standpoint, unless there are questions, and we really appreciate your time helping us gauge consensus here as we start this process.
Any final comments from Ryan? Okay, we'll move ahead. Consent agenda, any item on there that would you like to pull off and talk about first before we move on it? If not, a motion to approve the
Hold on, Mayor. Sorry, I couldn't hit my mute button fast enough. I did want to talk about the change order for the police department, and I believe we probably needed to approve this already, but if we could get some clarification on that now or in just a moment.
Sure, I can provide just a quick update on that. So this was when we were in the process of value engineering the project there at the beginning when the bids came in so high. Awnings and sunshades were a big piece that were cut back, and there was a discrepancy or some confusion on that in terms of cutting a percentage versus cutting particular awnings. And so the contractor submitted what they thought was money for certain awnings, and it left one out on the north side. I believe it was the north side that we feel we needed, and so that's what you're seeing here tonight.
Thanks. I had a feeling that was a result of value engineering.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if nothing else, a motion to approve the consent agenda be in order.
So moved.
Second.
Questions? All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Andrew, I think that's Kevin out there with no hair. You're up, buddy.
That is me. Thank you. Actually, I do not have a report tonight, but I do have a couple things that I just thought of that you guys had talked about, a couple projects. The Dubuque Street project, we did have our last property owner meeting. It was with the school district. That was on last Monday. We met with the Penn principal and the assistant facilities director, showed them the plan and talked to them. That meeting went really well. They were just complimentary of the project, so that was good to hear. And then the Ranchaw house. So Tracy and I and Guy met with the guy doing the flooring today, Dan. Dan is a great guy. He's a true craftsman. He really knows his stuff. You learn a lot from listening to Dan, but he showed us some samples on the main level. He's got it all sanded and showed us some samples, and it's going to look really cool. So we're pretty excited. I think Tracy's already alluded to that, but yeah, it's going to look neat. That's all I've got.
Okay, any questions for Kevin?
Kevin, did the school have any additions or questions about crossings or additions or lighting or anything with the pedestrian crossing there with the project?
No, we showed them all that. We actually had a little video made. It was our first draft, so they were able to see a video of it. And then we showed them all the lighting locations and the crossings. The principal had just positive comments about how the crossings were shorter now, a little bit shorter, and that kids won't have to cut through parking lots anymore. So yeah, like I said, everything was positive from their perspective. So.
Anything more for Kevin? Thanks, Kevin. Ryan, you're up again.
You're probably tired of hearing from me by now, but I do have a few updates I need to touch base on. One, just a real brief update on COVID-19 in terms of operations at the city. We've updated our policy now. You've seen that originally. It's a pretty thick policy book with the newest CDC guidelines, and when we do those updates, and we email it out through our or we blast it out through our training software called Target Solutions, so that everybody on staff can see those updates and sign off on those updates so they understand it. We've implemented our staffing plans that separate departments into teams, similar to what we were doing in April, May, June of this year. Some similar but not identical, but basically all of our departments are split into teams. Most of our facilities are closed or either open by appointments only. For example, City Hall is closed, but we do have the vestibule open where people can come in and talk on the phone to someone in City Hall. And then the rec and library are open by appointment only for limited services. And I think you saw some of that in their reports in the packet this week for weight room, track, computer usage at the library. So those are some of the things that are going on. We are going to run in this mode until January, through January 3rd, which is Sunday. So January 4th, we're hoping to maybe go back to a little bit of normalcy there, but that's where we're at right now from a COVID standpoint. Redfern Dog Park has been extremely popular. I drive by it regularly in transporting my daughter out to the high school for various reasons, and boy, it's been packed. Unfortunately, we're going to have to close it, and this release went out today, actually, in March, from March 1 through May 31st. We did some dormant seeding this year. With it being so popular, I mean, the grass just took a beating. And so guys got a plan for that, but it's going to require people to stay off of it from March through May 31st. It'll remain open until then. Memberships won't be required until until June 1. And then we'll start with the memberships. And just a friendly reminder to the community that if you drive by or driving out there and the parking lot is full, that means the park is full. And so we would ask that you don't park on the grass and maybe try to come back later when there's a spot available. But I think it's boy, it's been great to see the activity out there, and we just need we'll just need to close it to freshen up the sod out there. And then just wanted to make the group aware of a concern we received from a resident shortly after our last city council meeting about Muddy Creek. And the concern really was about the banks and about the creek itself and the garbage and junk that's accumulating out there. And we assured the resident that we would bring it up for the council, so they understood the concern as well. The resident seems to be concerned about, or excuse me, is concerned about the trash and garbage, and rightfully so. And we've had conversations with Guy about it in general as well. And he also has a concern, as you know, there's a lot of Muddy Creek throughout the community. We don't have the manpower or the resources to walk that creek regularly. Our stormwater coordinator will occasionally try to pull things out when he sees junk or garbage, and obviously any glaring issue we'll take care of right away. But the regular maintenance is difficult, and we've often relied on volunteers and service groups to help us clean the stream up. And in fact, like many public waterways or even road right-of-ways, volunteers are used, the adopt a highway type thing. And we have a really successful volunteer program in a couple of subdivisions with their HOAs and their ponds, where Goose Lake is one of them I can think of, where we'll drop off garbage bags and the residents will spend a day filling those garbage bags, and then we'll come back and pick up those garbage bags. And so those are the types of things, that we rely on, and that helps, that have helped us keep areas clean. And this year, unfortunately, we haven't been able to do a lot of that because of COVID and not getting together with folks. One example is we usually have a staff day where various departments will split up their day and go walk a creek or walk a pond and help. So certainly can understand the residents' concern here, and would just encourage folks as they're looking for projects when we're able to open things up in 21, if they're looking for a service project or something to do, that they reach out, and we'll certainly be able to offer them some options. And then lastly, on my update here is just a reminder that our second meeting in December will be December 22nd. The last couple of years, we have not had that meeting because of how it fell in conjunction with the holiday. A few days away this year, so we're planning on having it. We will have items that need action specifically. We're hoping to have some Rancho Way items on the agenda, so really need to have that meeting. And I've talked, I think, to most of you about that already, but just wanted to confirm that that is set up for Tuesday, December 22nd at 6:30. That's what I have, Mayor. Thanks for your time on that.
Ryan, I have a question for you. So at some point, do we reassess, I know with the Redfern Dog Park, if the parking is full, the park is full? Or do we ever reassess adding additional parking to that? Or maybe that's a Kevin question, or just something to think about, because I've heard comments from some citizens that it's frustrating sometimes. They're going out there and then they can't use the park because there's nowhere to park.
Where's Kevin at? Why? Oh, there you are, Kevin. I don't know that we have a whole lot of room for additional parking on land that we have now, but correct me if I'm wrong.
Not really. I had to talk to Guy, but I don't think there's a whole lot of room.
We've talked to the property owner out there about someday acquiring some additional property, and that could be an option there. But yeah, it's, to your point, it's been awful busy.
Anything more from Ryan? Okay, going on to my report. The other evening, I had the honor of presenting Keisha Fields the Bravo Award, which was, I think, very richly deserved. And a couple of you I saw had sent complimentary notes to her, which I really appreciate. She was very much surprised. She does a great job for Johnson County, and one of her comments is, I don't like the recognition for things like this. Well, that's probably going into the mix of why she gets it. She's one of these persons that are drivers, wants to just see things get going and get them done and have a successful result. But it was a nice presentation to do, and I was glad I could take part in it. The other item I had is I sent out an email earlier about anyone who was interested in ECOG board representative. Didn't hear anything. If anybody is interested, can you let me know by the end of the week? Again, it's a funny meeting at a funny time, like the fourth Thursday at 1:30 in the afternoon. I know it won't fit in with most of your schedules, but if you have any interest in all, I'll be glad to talk with you about it. So keep that in mind if you would. Ryan's already talked about the 22nd meeting, so if you know of any problems ahead of time about being able to do that, please let us know ahead of time. So that would help. All right, agreements with City of Coralville. Ryan, what is our overall objective?
Well, I'll kick this off, and then Grant, feel free to take it away. Basically, we're just making some minor adjustments to the road boundaries for clarification, for ease of maintenance and ownership and liability. And you can see with the exhibits, we're giving up a little in some areas and we're getting some in other areas. And the two staffs, mainly engineering and street staff, got together and looked at this and agreed that it makes a lot of sense. And so, and it's mostly along Forever Green Road, although with the new Wheaton Road installed, there's some area there as well. But we think it makes sense to get this squared away now and solve any future problems by through this agreement now.
Anyone have any questions about the exhibits? Grant, any comments from you, sir?
Sort of. There are two resolutions that are going to be before you here, and they are related. The discussion about cleaning up the boundary lines came because the Red Hawk subdivision in Coralville, Wheaton Road is halfway in the existing Coralville or the existing North Liberty corporate limits, and so that land had to be dedicated to the city of North Liberty by the state. And so there's a land patent in here, and as part of the 2080 agreement, we will then agree to later transfer that right away to Coralville, and so they will end up managing all of Wheaton Road as part of this boundary adjustment, as well as the southbound lanes of Coral Ridge Avenue, one of which is currently in North Liberty. So these are kind of a package deal. By accepting the 2080 agreement, we are also saying that we will transfer the land patent right away as well. So a vote on one kind of suggests that you should probably vote on the other two in order to avoid a contradictory result. I'm happy to answer any other questions you have about it, though.
Other questions? If not, we have resolution number 2020-101, a resolution approving the 28E agreement between the city of North Liberty and the city of Coralville for shared corporate boundary adjustments. Anyone wish to establish that resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Third.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or discussion?
I just have one quick question, Grant. Maybe I don't quite got that, but so if it's the 28E agreement, this is one that it's done and then it becomes a permanent thing, and it's not something that 10 years down the road we have to redo, or?
Right. Well, what this agreement is it sets in effect, and it starts the process for us to begin annexing and severing the various things together. And the easiest way to get all those bound up together is in 128 agreement. But no, we're not creating an entity that we have to manage later or anything like that.
Okay.
Good question. Ready to vote?
Yep.
Tracy?
Hoffman,
Aye.
Pollock,
Aye.
Wason,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Harrington.
Aye.
Resolution passes 5 affirmative, none opposed. Resolution number 2020-102, a resolution accepting the transfer of ownership of the Wheaton Road right-of-way and utility easements from the state of Iowa. Anyone wish to establish that resolution?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Final discussion or questions? Tracy, please.
Harrington,
Aye.
Hoffman,
Aye.
Wason,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Pollock.
Aye.
Resolution passes 5 affirmative, none opposed. Next item, CDBG COVID-19. Tracy, I gotta throw this back at you.
You do. So will you open the public hearing for me, Mayor?
Yes, now's the time for our public hearing in regards to SOFA, which is strange to me, but Emergency Child Care Program.
So SOFA is status of funded activities. So this is a requirement of the CDBG Community Development Block Grant Program. So I need to run through the list of items that were in the packet. for the record and to comply with CDBG requirements. That includes the need for the project, which was during the early part of the pandemic when daycares and childcare facilities were closed, limiting childcare opportunities. The city stepped in to provide emergency childcare. The description of funded projects and activities. The emergency childcare program provided 8 weeks of free childcare to essential workers. $12,000 in CDBG funds were received through the grant for this project. The city did not do an income survey, so it was estimated that approximately 30% of the people that benefited from the project were low to moderate income. The project was located at the North Liberty Community Center. Relocation was not applicable in this project. If any residents have concerns or complaints, I am the point of contact. For community development and housing needs of low to moderate persons in the city, any planned or potential activities, this request was made in the public hearing notice. No responses have been received, but if there are responses or input from the council, this would be the time for those. And the same thing for other community development and housing needs for the community. So if you have anything as council for either one of those two, please send them my way and I will incorporate those into the minutes.
Thank you. Any other comment from the public? Hearing none, call the public hearing to a close. Public hearing number 2, regards to SOPA, Summer Lunch and Fun Program.
So this is the status of funded activities for the Summer Luncheon Fund CDBG project. During the pandemic, children that normally receive their lunches were not in the schools. The school district did provide lunches and still does provide lunches, but the lunches were not proximate to kids that were without transportation, didn't likely have the ability to get to the high school and or Garner Elementary to receive those benefits. So this program provided food and activities to kids in the central part of our community. Summer Luncheon Fund provided activity packets for well over 500 kids this summer at the Ranshaw House drive-through pickup. $14,400 was received in the grant. And we estimate 30% again, because we didn't do surveying of the kids that were in the program, but that number could be significantly higher as well. And like I said, lunches and packets were distributed at the Ranshaw House, and then we distributed activity packets with the school's lunch program in Deerfield, at Garner Elementary, and at North Bend. No relocation was required. I am the point of contact with concerns or complaints about the project. And again, we go back to community development and housing needs of both low to moderate income persons and community development housing needs for all of the community. So any of those comments, send them my way and I'll incorporate them into the minutes for this meeting. That's all I have unless there are questions.
Any other public comments? Hearing none, call the public hearing to a close. Next item, old business. New business?
Hopefully Brian saw the thousands of signs that were put out by Project Better Together staff, committee members, not staff, committee members. Brian, I did add you to the list to be adopted. I tried to adopt you and they told me no. I could not pick my adoptee. So I did try, because I knew at a minimum there would be a case of Mountain Dew in there, because I know what you like. But I certainly want to shout out to the committee for putting the signs out and really drawing attention to that our local healthcare workers in general are superheroes. And we certainly do thank you, Brian, and all of those in our community that are working very hard to keep us safe and healthy.
Well, I have seen the signs that I see them every day coming to work, so it's appreciated. It's on the traffic way coming in to the parking lots and stuff. So I think the other thing to kind of remember, the picture was kind of looked like a healthcare worker, but there's a lot of people here that help doing everything here. And, from our lab folks, our housekeepers who are just in the room just as much as the nurses are. We have people, our maintenance guys who keep things running and stuff. So there's a whole lot of people it takes to do this. And so I think we appreciate, focusing on, the providers and stuff, but there's a lot of people behind the scenes who are really working their butts off us too. So we just need to give them a shout out.
Any other new business? If nothing else, we are adjourned. Thank you very much for attending this evening.